My name is Jacob Stoops.
And I'm Jeff Luella.
And you're listening to the Page 2 podcast.
This is our podcast about the people of the SEO industry.
We chronicle the real-life stories, experiences, challenges, and advice from some of the most amazing people in the business. In today's episode, we chat with Natalie Arney, digital marketing and SEO consultant, as well as speaker at the upcoming Brighton SEO conference in April. We discuss how she went from the profession of teaching to a career in SEO, how her skills ended up being a very natural fit in the SEO industry, getting started in copywriting, agency life versus in-house, and so much more. In the news, we talk about the new Bing Webmaster Tools rollout, as well as Google's recent statements on how their systems aren't looking for EAT, but hope that their signals align to EAT. And finally, we deep dive into one of our most important and serious topics yet, mental health and SEO. So get your popcorn ready as we tell Natalie's SEO story and have another great roundtable discussion. Hey everybody, it is Jacob Stoops and we are back. Episode 42 of the Page 2 podcast, and I am here with Mr. Jeff Luella. How's it going, Jeff?
Oh, great. It was just like yesterday we were at 40. Now we're at 42.
It was literally like 14 days ago that we were at 40. Amazing.
Yeah.
And Jeff, I'm glad to hear that you've cleared the sound from all of the clicking and fan belts that you have running in your computer. So
yes, high-powered microphones are not the greatest. So. And
now it kind of sounds like you're in a wind tunnel, maybe.
Oh, let me shut that off then.
Yeah, shut off the wind tunnel.
We'll move it closer. How does that sound?
You have in your office. So. Anyways, I feel like Jeff and I usually get into some weird unplanned banter at the beginning of the episode, and I'm not sure if it makes people like comfortable, like oh, these guys
all right.
Down to earth, just a couple of idiots, or if it makes people uncomfortable, like when we talked about the weather last episode, which I think is like the lowest form of small talk and conversation, and I am awful at small talk. So like when I get to the weather, after that, I've got nothing else. I've got nothing else, and I'm just going to stand quietly and make people uncomfortable. So,
yeah. Not
to say that in last week's episode, that's where we got with Jason. We had an amazing discussion, but talk about the weather.
You are now talking to the beginners champion of cornhole. We won last night.
Really?
In the beginners league, so we are now the champions of the beginners. which makes us have to move to intermediate next year. So
okay, all right, champ. I'm just going to start calling you champ.
Yeah, it was a wonderful time.
As champ or Mr. Luella.
We got a trophy and all. it's a little tiny one that was like this big, but it's it's good size.
So Jeff, we're actually being a little rude. We have a guest. We got another guest. That's what we do. So our guest is Miss Natalie Arney. Natalie, how's it going?
I'm good, thank you. Yeah, all good, thank you. Here in rainy England, rainy Brighton, but I'm all good myself. Yes, thank you.
Yeah, so we are jumping back across the pond. We've done a lot of jaunting back and forth across the pond with different guests, and Natalie is a digital marketing consultant. You might have heard that she mentioned Brighton. Of course, everybody I'm sure knows of the conference Brighton SEO.
Right.
And I guess my first question would be, what's it like to be in a city where there's such a major hub for SEO in terms of like, I guess being like the mecca that
right.
people go to once a year.
Yeah, it's a strange one. When you always mention to someone that you live in Brighton, they do think it's a bit strange. It's a city where everyone knows everyone, especially within the search industry. And everyone's pretty much worked with everyone as well. And then on top of that, having Brighton SEO come along a couple of times a year, and you're just it's bizarre. It really is bizarre, but it's great at the same time. It's such a great conference, and it's such a great way to celebrate search and having such a search oriented city. But yeah, I enjoy it. I enjoy living here, and I enjoy going to Brighton SEO and working in SEO. So it's pretty fitting for me.
Cool. So yeah, we'll get more into that, but I had to ask right off the bat. So let me explain quickly the podcast. We're a small podcast. We're like the little train that could, and we're growing. We've had in the last couple of months, honestly, our highest listenership since we started, which is almost a year and a half now. We've been running at this podcast, so we're really excited, especially recently, to see kind of the growth that we've been experiencing. But for those of you that have never heard this podcast before, I like to say that we just kind of bump into people organically. And we're constantly having people come to us and say, "Hey, I just discovered your podcast, and it's great," and they say a lot of nice words about it, which we're very thankful for the really nice words. But people really have just been kind of discovering it. It's very word of mouth, and like I said, organic, no pun intended. But yeah, so the premise of the podcast is, especially when it started, was essentially to tell the stories of SEOs, because none of us get into SEO on purpose. It almost seems like unless you're really new to the industry, and even if you're really new, a lot of people just kind of fall into it from other places. And when I started the podcast, really wanted to figure out kind of a unique value proposition. Why would somebody want to listen to this podcast over any other SEO podcast that they could listen to? And I thought, you know what? I find that part of the industry incredibly interesting, and I want to have a voice. And I thought that those stories were very important to tell. And not only that, telling the insider stories about what it's like to be an SEO just day to day, and the challenges and trials and tribulations that we all go through professionally in this industry. And I think obviously Jeff has joined in season 2 and has brought a tremendous amount of experience and a lot of really great stories with him as well. And we've had, over the course of time, a lot of really amazing guests come on and be very frank and very honest. So that's kind of the core of the podcast. In season 2, we kind of added a couple of different components. We've added a segment about the SEO news, where we talk about the news of the day, whatever it may be. Could range from big news to Twitter beefs, whatever, kerfuffles, I like to call them. And honestly, we just give our kind of unfiltered opinions, and usually it's right as things are breaking. So it's literally the first thing off the top of our heads in terms of how we're interpreting the various things going on in the industry. And a lot of times it's Jeff being level-headed and me just yelling about things. And then kind of the third leg of the stool, as Ian Howells kind of coined it, the third leg of the stool that we added in season 2 is a deep dive. So every episode we try to dive into a particular kind of predetermined topic. And this week, I think we are going to have one of the more important discussions that we've ever had on this podcast. And not to say that we haven't talked about it before. It's been especially in season 1, I would say maybe to a lesser degree in season 2, but it's definitely been there. We have talked about the issue of mental health, and mental health as it relates to SEO, but mental health is a big topic. So I don't think that we're going to even scratch the surface, but I think it's a really important topic to cover, because as humans, it's very natural to have to deal with mental health issues. And I think the pressures of being an SEO, where your job is entirely based on performance all the time, there's a lot of pressure that comes with that can lead to mental health issues. So I think it's an important discussion to have, and an important discussion to attempt to tackle. Not going to say we're mental health experts. We're not. But we have experience. I know myself personally, and I don't want to speak for Natalie and Jeff, but I've gone through plenty of mental health battles in my life. So I'm sure that I'll have some good stories when it comes to the end of the episode. So stick around if you want to hear that component of the discussion. But without further ado, the first stool of the podcast is background. So Natalie, talk us through your background. Who are you? How did you get into SEO? What are you doing today? Kind of what got you into the industry?
Wow, this is a really interesting one, and it's something that I'm actually finding is starting to become a lot more common. So my background is that I started off. I did a degree at university in marketing, but I didn't want to go straight into marketing myself. So I then ended up doing a postgraduate diploma qualification in business education, and I taught for 7 years. So I taught 11 to 16-year-old children. I taught them business studies, and I taught them ICT, which for those who are outside of the UK is basically computer studies. So I did that for 7 years, and then I moved on to SEO. So I started an internship with a local company in Worthing called Fresh Egg. They're an agency. Did an internship there, and then began my career. It's an interesting one because obviously I went from marketing to teaching back to marketing. But it all kind of fell into place. That's how I've started out. I started out in an agency, and I have just finished my first in-house job, which has been a bit of an interesting one. And then I'm now a consultant, so I have a kind of hybrid job at the moment that I consult within a parental company, where we have a number of different sites that I have my own sites that I own, and then I consult on other sites within the business. So it's a really interesting one, from where I started out as a budding teacher. And definitely what we're speaking about later about mental health played a massive part into my career change from teaching to moving into marketing. So when I was teaching, the teachers over in the UK, they work very, very hard and very, very long hours, but for very little pay. So the pay isn't amazing. Obviously it's a rewarding job, but when you're working 60 plus hours a week, there's a line that has to be crossed, and I crossed that line, and it was best for my health to find something else, find a different career. And my skill set matched SEO. One of my friends worked at a local agency. I discussed with her in the pub. I said, what do you think? Do you think I would be a really good match for your kind of career? And she said, I think you'd be perfect. So then I wrote to lots of different agencies in the area, and the guys at Fresh Egg, I went in on the Thursday. My whole story of that is quite a weird one. So I went in on the Thursday. I got offered the internship that day. That weekend I then left my partner that I was then living with, and then on the Monday I started my internship. So it was a completely different life change. I was changing my life, changing my job, changing my career, changing where I lived, and obviously I'd left a partnership that obviously wasn't working out for me. So it was a complete new slate.
That is quite the whirlwind, especially when you talk about kind of that compressed time frame where all of those really big and significant life events happened.
Definitely.
Yeah.
So my wife, she has been a teacher. I think it's 13 years now, and I would say that my experience kind of watching her kind of go through it, it's not just teachers in the UK that are massively underpaid. Teachers in the US are massively underpaid, and I would say every day of the week my wife makes her week just generally is so much harder than mine. So much harder. And she works not only more, I think she works harder just as a result of the industry that she's in. I think as a teacher, she tends to, because she teaches, she taught for many years kindergarten and for many years inner city here in Ohio, Columbus, Ohio, inner city. And some of the stories that she brought home to me were almost like, I don't even know the best way to describe them other than like completely believable and yet unbelievable. Everything that you would anticipate and expect about inner city versus, and still at the same time, like I can't believe that these kids or these parents or these families or whatever, or this school district or the school or whatever are going through some of the stuff. And I think as a teacher, the natural tendency is to because you want to teach, you want to support the students in your class, and the tendency is to take on some of those burdens onto yourself and to kind of feel and really relate to what they're going through. And sometimes that baggage comes home as well.
Definitely.
Yeah. And to be going through all of that and to then have the extra components of all of the extra work that you have to do. Like, I don't know a teacher who doesn't always work on the weekends, and everybody says, and I don't know how it is in the UK, but they get the summers off. Well, let me tell you, they get the summers off because basically they're working 60-hour weeks when school is in season. And not only that, when they're not technically putting time on the clock, they're still doing work. For many years, my wife worked way more than me for less pay. And like, I don't want to get into like the pay discussion, but substantially less pay. And I was like, it's completely garbage, but at the same time, it's heavily regulated. I don't know like how big unions are over there, but unions here make it so that teacher pay and everything is heavily regulated. So in one respect, that's good, because like in 10 years, we're going to know exactly how much she's making. But at the same time, there's no, even if you were the best of the best teacher, there's no way that you're going to make more money because it is so regulated. And not only that, like they have to continue to go back to school. It's insane. Like for their entire lives, teachers are constantly going back to school and having to pay for ongoing education and having to bend to different laws as they kind of change and evolve. So like, believe me, when you say I had to get out of teaching because it was affecting my mental health, that is a discussion that my wife and I have had many times. It's funny that you bring that up. And we have had friends who are also teachers that got out because it is such a hard job, and it was affecting not just their mental health, but things like their marriage.
Definitely
leads into all kinds of different areas.
So both my brothers, my mom, and then my brother's wife were all teachers. My oldest brother got out of teaching. He works now for University of Washington in one of their research departments, but not teaching. My other brother moved up and is now a vice principal, which again, I think you even work more hours because you don't get those times off, and you're managing all the teachers, which is my brother's wife is actually an English teacher. My mom's retired now, but that's all I hear all day long is teacher stories. And you know, from one way, I'm like, I look at it, it's like, you know, at least in the United States, like the government kind of not regulates, but kind of like sets the agendas. But there's just so many more hours that are involved in, you know, first of all, it's like, if you really care for your students, a lot of times you have 60 of them. How can you care for 60 people, right? And I feel like the schools in the United States really leave some, like we have a no child left behind policy, but I think that but in general, I feel like it's just we push people that maybe aren't ready for things. And it's really hard. Like I went to high school with almost 1,000 people in my grade. Wow. How do you teach like 35 to 40 kids in a class? like as teachers, they're just tired at the end of the day. So I felt like I was one of the students that like did not get the best out of school. And I don't necessarily blame teachers. I blame like just like the system in general. And it actually really got my education out of school when I got out of there and really understand now, like back in high school, I might have thought teachers were the problem. Now I realize it's like, no, they're fighting an uphill battle all the time. And they're also, I see them at the end of the day, the grading papers at 11 o'clock at night and things like that, where as an SEO, I'm like, can we automate this? Isn't there a way to just put the paper in there and it grades it and we just make sure the grade's right? But no, I mean, you got to read everything and, understand each kid, where the kid's coming from, understand their background. And then next year you have a whole set of new kids. And it's really like, I can see how it's just tiring. And Jake, when you were talking about like hearing some of the stories, especially like on the inner cities, it's like a lot of it's heartbreaking. And then you're dealing with people's home lives, and now you're their psychologist on top of their, teacher on top of their mentor, and you want to inspire, and it's really tough to inspire sometimes.
It is. And I have nothing but respect for teachers. And I would say like even my hardest day as an SEO cannot pale in comparison to most of their easiest days.
Yeah, definitely.
So to put that, to put it in perspective, I think one question I would ask is, it seems like now you had the internship, but I would want to know what it's like to kind of go from one career, which is on one end of the spectrum, into digital marketing and SEO, and kind of how that felt. You mentioned having talked to your friend, and your friend had mentioned, hey, I think that you'd be kind of suited for this job. What do you think made you well suited to handle that transition, and how did you handle that transition to kind of polar opposites on the career spectrum?
It's a funny one. I think as a person, I'm quite adaptive anyway. So I'm pretty adaptive, but what was fueling me was me being completely fed up. And I was just desperate for the change. Obviously I'd been used to when I was younger, and I was doing my degree, I'd worked in offices, especially with my mum. So she worked for a travel company, and I went to work at the company that she worked for. She worked in the call center as a manager, and then I worked in the kind of the more admin-y side, and I worked a little bit with the marketing team. So I had a little bit of office experience, but it all was all a little bit of a complete change, because obviously it's agency. Over here in the UK, we used to have a TV show called Nathan Barley. It's a comedy show, and it's based on a kind of an agency, a creative agency, where everyone's on space hoppers and scooters, and they all wear trendy clothes. And everyone joked to me, especially a lot of my old teacher friends, and they were just like, oh, you're going to be like Nathan Barley now that you're working at a marketing agency. And yeah, I thought it was quite funny. It was a little bit like that, but not quite. Obviously, we had a couple of office dogs who were running around. We had beers on a Friday. We had a cool office, and people coming and going, and really cool art and all the tech that you wanted, and a gym inside the office and things like that. And I was, pretty thrown back. But at the end of it, I was pretty geared up, because I'd been blogging before, and when I started my internship, I was working as an SEO copywriter rather than an SEO, and I took it as a learning experience as well. So I made sure that I paired myself up with people in the team that were really knowledgeable and that were really up for helping me out and kind of skilling myself up, not just for obviously the copywriting side, but developing my skills wider and seeing exactly what I was interested in.
So we've actually had, so you're the first teacher I think we've had, but we've had a fair amount of people that have come from either copywriting or combo journalism and then copywriting. backgrounds. And one of the quotes that has stood out to me from one of my former colleagues, Margie Stahl, over at Razorfish and Rosetta, they used to be, their companies now merged together, is that it is a lot easier to train and teach copywriters to become SEOs than it is to train an SEO to become a copywriter. And as a copywriter, I don't know what your thoughts on that would be.
Yeah, I think that's true. From my team that I just finished managing, so I had what I was looking for when I was hiring new members of staff. I was talking to a couple of my friends this morning on Twitter about what do I look for, or what did I look for when I was bringing in a new intern. And out of everything, I think obviously things like fitting in with the team and having a passion for learning are massive things. But if you're working on a very copy heavy job, then obviously you need good writers. And if a good writer is keen on learning, then you can train them up to be a good SEO. It's having that thirst for learning. But yeah, definitely, I think looking at copywriter versus a technical SEO, I think, yeah, definitely a SEO will find it less easy to train as a copywriter. I'm not going to say that every SEO is going to be finding it hard, but I think writing definitely comes it's more of a talent than a skill. I'm sure a lot of people will tell me that that's wrong, but having a way with words I find is definitely something that it is quite difficult to learn, and it takes a while to learn versus being able to understand the more technical side of things.
Yeah, no, as someone who is not a great writer, and I try. I mean, I've tried to, I write everything down and I QA it 600 times and pull out the thesaurus, and it is very time intensive when I'm trying to write something, compared to I watch other people who could just write something, not the first time, but pretty much their first pass at it is like my 8th pass at something. But I think it's one of those where if you have the passion for it with anything, right? If you have the passion for writing, it just comes way more natural to you compared to, I have more of a fear of writing. So it makes it way harder to do it. So.
Yeah. Jeff, to quote Napoleon Dynamite, your meta descriptions are the worst.
Yes. That's about as far as I can write is meta descriptions. After that, I don't want to write all pages. I'll write titles and metas, but
that's funny. So Natalie, we always have to ask for people that have been on both sides of the house, agency versus in-house. And at some point I would love to go back and tabulate the responses to see kind of where people lie with their preferences, but want to add another response to, I guess, the ongoing questionnaire of agency versus in-house, which is better.
Well, actually, it's quite funny because last month I did it was my first talk actually, and it was a talk on agency versus in-house SEO at Blue Array's Reading SEO over here in the UK, and it's just a constant thing. When I was at the Brighton SEO speaker training yesterday, again the topic came up, in-house versus agency SEO, because obviously a few of us have made the jump recently. I don't want to say the whole the stereotype of it depends, but I think it varies on the size of the company that you work for, the size of the agency, and what you actually do. There's what I found was when I moved into my in-house role. So I moved from a really big agency. So I worked at iCrossing. I worked for a small agency for a small amount of time, and then I moved in-house. And I was the only person who knew about SEO in the company when I first joined. I hadn't been doing any SEO. I was the only person that knew about it. I was hired to, number one, fix the site, and number two, set up the strategy and grow the team, to to then obviously take things forward. And we've seen a massive amount of growth, obviously implementing all of that strategy, but it's not always that way. So you might join a massive multinational company and be part of a 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 person team that's all over the world. And you might only be doing one or two things and have a massive dev queue to deal with. So yeah, it's, for me, I think I found the right in-house role for me. And some people I think will struggle going from the agency side to the in-house. Number one, because there's loads of responsibility, and also that there's so much that you need to do pretty much on your own. A lot of the time you'll be hired because you are cheaper than spending money on an agency. But that means that you have to do everything that the agency will do. So it might be that you're not always doing SEO. So under my remit, the whole of the customer acquisition strategy fell under me, which is fine because I was completely comfortable with doing that, but not everyone is. And I think it's more about finding the right role for you rather than an agency or agency versus in-house. So I apologies that I can't give a clear question. It's the SEO stereotype. But yeah,
it depends,
it does depend.
Just like an SEO trying to ride the fence. Oh yeah. Now I feel like I've talked about this ad nauseum before. I agree that it highly depends on the person. I have found for myself that I'm more of an agency person. I think I like the variability. I like the fact that you can switch gears often. I found that it is nice from a camaraderie standpoint to be able to have other people that kind of understand you, meaning other SEOs that you work with and you can bounce ideas off of. I like the range of clients that we have the opportunity to work with. And if you don't like one client you're working with, well, guess what? There's always a different client coming around the corner because in agency world, and that is one of the stressful things, there is a lot of flux in agency world. On the in-house side, there were parts of it that I really, really liked, especially the idea that you had one or just a handful of sites that you had to focus on and you got to focus on them all the time. And it was really nice to be able to get up in my case and go talk to the developer and sit right over their shoulder and show them exactly what needs to happen. Whereas on the agency side, it's, you're constantly cutting red tape or you're passing over implementation recommendations, but you're never actually doing them yourself. And implementation is probably the biggest single issue on the agency side that you face, because it's really hard to get other people to do the things that you need them to do, and to do them right. But on the in-house side, for me, I never cared. Well, I liked the ability to go more broadly than SEO, and in every in-house role that I've ever had, there was definitely responsibilities that fell outside of SEO. I mean, in the last role, I was managing social media, doing website pop-up strategy, those annoying pop-ups, but they actually they're really annoying, but they actually worked.
Oh wow.
And everybody in the company said, man, that pop-up is really annoying. And I'm like, yeah, I know you're right, but it makes us money, so we're going to keep doing it. And just a variety of other things. But the biggest thing that I didn't like is because I was the only one doing SEO or doing the SEO, nobody else, there was nobody else to talk to, nobody to relate to. And that became very difficult to me in terms of kind of feeling alone within the company. And some people operate better than I did in that scenario. So like, that's a great segue into kind of the mental health aspect that we're going to talk about later, because that for me led to some serious depression. So Anyways, yeah, so I tend to find that I'm an agency person. I tend to do better in agencies, and Jeff, you've been in, a bunch of different roles. I can't remember where you fall out on this.
I've never been in-house though. I've always been agency life, and it's interesting because it just ever since I kind of went to my first agency, been in this a long time. So before the .com bust, when we were in the boom, it was like a really fun industry, right? People were just spending money like crazy. And we know what happened after that. They all went out of business. But I think that I still kind of chase the dragon on that sometimes, where it's like the agencies were always fun, even though it was like work hard, play hard. The play hard part I really enjoyed. I enjoy working hard also, but at the same time, it was like you were able, I think there was a lot more community, a lot more like feeling like family, because we would all come up and in agencies, a lot of times we work together really to solve some really tough problems. And from there we, get some great results. I see a lot of in-house, like they might have that family feel in-house, but it seems like things might take a little longer, or things are a little slower. And that's one thing that kind of kept me away from there. But I think it comes down to all the right companies, right? If you're at a company where you're the only one doing SEO, then that could be a problem. Or I see a lot of in-house jobs where you are labeled like the web guy, right? So you do everything, which I kind of do enjoy that aspect, but it's like, oh, our email's broken. Jake, go fix our email. And it's like, why do SEO? Well, isn't it all the same? You just do stuff like that. So I think that happens a lot more in-house, depending on the size. Now, if you worked for Amazon.com in-house, I am sure you can be a specialist, and like you could be the tech SEO guy there. But at a smaller, in-house job, you're probably going to wear many, many hats, which is appealing to some people, and to some others it's not.
So Jeff, it's funny that you mentioned like all of the different responsibilities you have at an in-house role I had. Before I joined Rosetta, I was working for a group of car dealerships, which I might add is about everything you would anticipate in terms of working for a car dealership. It was just the cliche of all cliches, but because they didn't know exactly what I did, they confused marketing guy also with IT guy. So
fix my computer.
The very first thing they asked me to do on my first day, set up this massive like industrial printer. I had no clue. I was like, I think I'm in the wrong place on my first day. And I was like, great. This is my first day at this company, and they completely don't understand what I do, and they're making me set up a printer, which is not, I'm so bad at any IT work. So definitely not my forte. Oh, so Natalie, I've got a couple more questions before we go into the news. So you've been now a consultant. Well, actually, it looks like you've just started as kind of a full-time consultant.
Yeah.
What made you kind of want to make that jump? And I would ask kind of what are the different challenges that you face as an independent consultant versus being in-house or at an agency somewhere?
So it's a funny one because so the way that I'm employed, I'm a consultant, but it's a kind of in-house role as well. So I mainly work. I do have additional clients, but my main client will pays my salary, which is great. I think it's for someone like me, I didn't want to take the massive step into being completely fully freelance and completely independent, and to be able to have been offered the opportunity to have a main client that I then don't have to worry about everything else. I feel incredibly lucky to have been given that opportunity. And then if I want to do additional work, then I can do that. I've been incredibly lucky to have been given that opportunity by my main client to do that. I do have a couple of main projects that I work on for that client, but then I do consult on other things. So, for example, this week, like we were saying with the different, you might not be doing SEO. So this week, obviously, I've been there for 2.5 weeks now, and I've been doing my audits and my strategies and everything for the sites that I'm responsible for. However, I've been taken on onto another site where I'm helping with the display campaigns because I'm the only one at the moment who can help with those. So I'm going in and analysing the data and optimising their campaigns and making sure that the placements are the correct placements and which ones are working and which ones are not. So yeah, it's an interesting one though. I think the steps that I've taken quite a big plunge as well. I say that I've taken the safe route where I've got one main client that pays my salary and then the additional ones. However, I've also gone remote. So going from working in-house in the office all the time with my team and then going completely independent, well, kind of completely independent, not fully independent, but working in my own home, in my own little office. It's a strange one. Obviously, there's an amazing community online. So I talk to my specific group of SEO friends that I have. We have a group chat and everything, which is really nice. I have specific friends, and the Women in Tech SEO Slack channel has been a goldmine for just chatting to people. But yeah, it's an interesting one so far. It's only been a couple of weeks, so I'm not 100% sure on how it's going to pan out for the future. But that's where I am now.
Yeah. So I guess the way I'm interpreting that is I interpret it this way because we have someone on our team that kind of does the same thing. So you're almost like a contractor.
Yes.
Yeah. So that makes a lot more sense, and that's kind of like I see it as kind of the toe in the water, so to speak, for eventually going out and being kind of fully independent. But I too am one of those people that have stayed in agency and in-house life because I don't want to, and I've thought about making the jump to becoming a contractor, but I don't want to have like a massive gap in, with things like salary where you have the risk of not being paid and not being able to, pay your bills and do whatever you need to do financially. And that's just been a risk that I've not personally been willing to take. So I definitely empathize there with the approach. So the other thing I wanted to ask about is a little bird told me that you're speaking at Brighton SEO, and you just mentioned speaker training. So
yes.
What are you talking about? And what are you, I guess, looking forward to? I don't know if you've done speaking a lot in the public. So I guess just talk us through that.
Yeah, so my talk is going to be on punching above your weight. So basically what it is how you can compete with the big guys. So as I mentioned before, when I first started the role that I just left, there was no one there that was really doing any SEO. And there was so much opportunity. The site had so many pages. They offered a great product, but they just weren't performing that well. And yeah, the thing with the travel industry that I found in particular is that the big players, or who you would see as the big players, aside from people like Expedia and Skyscanner and the meta searches, a lot of the airlines themselves, they don't do SEO, or they don't do it well. So there was a massive opportunity to create content and to obviously compete with people like Delta, with Virgin, with those massive airlines, and glean a bit of their traffic. And that's what we did. So it's basically helping people that are in smaller agencies who have small clients and small budgets, and having a look and seeing what they can do to kind of compete with the big names. And also if you're in-house, then how can you compete with those big guys? Because what I see on Twitter and LinkedIn and within publications is a lot of people will sing and dance about the big guys and say how amazing and brilliant they are. They're not always amazing and brilliant at SEO. We all know that. And just looking at the opportunities that those smaller companies can do, all of the different things that they can do to take advantage of that. And there's just so many different things. So hopefully it will be a little bit helpful, a little bit inspirational, and there'll be something for people to kind of take back to the office and think, okay, what can we do as a company with our small budget that will actually help us? Because all we had was all the budget that we had at Alternative Airlines was staff, and even then it was a bit tricky to actually bring on new members of staff.
Yeah, it's interesting. So a couple of thoughts. I was thinking of the old analogy where people are running from a bear, right? You don't have to run as fast as the fastest guy. You just got to run faster than the guy next to you.
Exactly.
Right. So, and there's still lift involved there. And I think you're absolutely right. With the bigger that the company gets, the more complex and the more red tape is involved, and they sometimes don't have the best SEO strategy in place, and they get by because they're a massive brand, and they've got all kinds of other signals coming in that make up for that. But as a smaller brand, you definitely have the advantage of being hopefully a little bit more nimble and maybe a little bit better at execution. So there's no harm in being second place or third place or fourth place if you're in 10th, 11th, 12th, or whatever the case may be. There are still opportunities there. And I do love your presentation title, Punching Above Your Weight. And it reminded me of an algorithm, Jeff, that you created where you pulled together all of the presentation names and dynamically kind of mash them together into like a presentation name picker. And Jeff, just throw that one into your.
Oh yeah.
We always said when we went into partnerships. So we worked with a lot of different partner brands such as PayPal, Affirm, Klarna, a lot of the kind of the massive payment options. And one of them once said to us, it's like, you guys are really small and it looks like you're punching above your weight, but when you look at the stats, that's where you guys shine. And it's like, yeah, exactly. That it completely made sense, and I had to put that in there.
Now I'm curious as to what, like, I'm sure that there's like a presentation, your slide intro image, and I'm picturing like I guess maybe not a Mike Tyson, because Mike Tyson in his time was kind of a badass, but I don't even know what you might be using as a slide presentation title, but I'm picturing some sort of a boxer, maybe like a David versus Goliath or something.
Oh, there's nothing like that at all in mine. It's going to be a little bit of a surprise.
Okay. People are just going to have to stay tuned.
Okay. You're just going to have to see.
So Jeff, what is in the news?
Cool. So one of the big things coming out of SMX was that that other search company, Bing, who stole the name Webmaster Tools, made Google change to Search Console, is now updating their Webmaster Tools. I think, I don't know how far they are along right now. I actually linked into it with some of our accounts and was going through it, and it, looks sort of like Google Search Console to some parts, where we have like the graph on top and, clicks, impressions, click-through rates, and then like the list of keywords or something underneath it. So it looks like they're updating it, and it's, it looks nice. It looks a lot cleaner. It looks a lot like the old Bing Webmaster Tools. It was one that I always liked because it had a lot more information, or a lot of different information, but Google has really been stepping up recently on theirs. But on Bing's Webmasters, I guess they call it Webmaster Tool. I don't know if it's or just Webmaster anymore or something like that. But the new ones, they give you like a search performance report where, like I said, we have clicks and pages. I only see 6 months worth of data, which is one thing I know we always complain about with Google Search Console. So hopefully they upgrade that to where Google's at now. I think Google's at 16 months now. So you get a little bit more than a year-over-year data on that. But in general, I think Bing's is working on cleaning it up and making it look a little nicer.
So Jeff, maybe I feel kind of stupid because I looked at our company's Bing Webmaster Tools account, and I cannot figure out how to see the new version. And I was just like, oh, maybe they haven't rolled it out fully to
So I got it from the Search Engine Roundtable article on it. There was a link in there that said, you can play with it with this using this link. So
you're sneaky.
It's actually the link itself is pretty small. So it's aka.ms/new BWT for Bing Webmaster Tools, and then that'll get you to the new version. And again, it's like when the new Search Console came out, where there was like one report or two reports, and everyone's like, "This thing stinks," and it's like they're just starting it. So that's kind of what's happening right now. Where Bing, there's the 3 reports: there's search performance, there's sitemaps, and there's backlinks. And some of them have decent data. They kind of look like Search Console's data, but at the same time, they're not. I don't see a way to compare, so I can't compare like the last 3 months to the 3 months before that. It just gives me 1 month, 3 months, or 6 months worth of data. So I'm guessing those are things that they will be adding in there soon, because of course we always want to compare. I mean, it's good to see the last 6 months, but I would love to be able to see the last 16 months or 18 months to be able to kind of do a bigger comparison. You're doing 6 months over the 6 months before that would be great, or 6 months over the 6 months of last year. But at the same time, I think they're in the right direction, and they're going to start doing it kind of like the way Search Console did it.
So, Natalie, I also want to get your thoughts on kind of the maybe Bing in general, but the new Webmaster Tools. But I'm scrolling through Twitter and looking at some of the different screenshots that are coming out, and 2 things stand out to me. One, it does look a lot like Google Search Console, and I would hope, and I think that maybe Bing probably needs to clear some minimum level of viability in terms of the basic tools that they offer. And I think that they tried to do this with the previous Search Console, where they had things in there that were very unique to their version or their previous version of Webmaster Tools, that were very unique to them, that Google Search Console did not do. And I would hope that once they kind of lay the base of kind of the foundational stuff that you need as a webmaster, that they have things that are going to make them stand out and differentiate. Otherwise, this is just like a light version of Search Console, which I would hope is a business that they don't want to be. But then again, maybe I guess there's no harm in being number 2. The other thing that stood out to me, and this is like file this under weird things, is Barry Schwartz shared Search Engine Roundtable's search performance report, and he shared the keywords, and the first 2 keywords that come up are porn keywords.
Oh,
and,
nice.
Yeah, and I'm like, how on earth is Search Engine Roundtable getting their it looks like their highest number of impressions and click-throughs porn keywords? So if you've seen like Barry's screenshot, maybe you didn't notice that, maybe he knows it, I don't know. I was just like, well, that's weird.
It's funny because I saw that screenshot and didn't really look at the data itself.
I'm scrolling through and I look at it and I'm like, does that say Pornhub? And okay, all right, I guess it does. Okay, good job.
Maybe he's trying to do what my good friend Mark Rofe does with his screenshots to get people to look further. At the moment, what he's been doing has been obviously putting things up on TikTok about digital PR. So the agency that he works for at the moment, Rise at 7, they've been testing out TikTok and been sharing digital PR tips. And when he's done his and he's shown his laptop, there's always been like how to find a girlfriend, which obviously has led into his whole date mark website campaign. But at the same time, it's maybe Barry's trying to get, a little bit more attention and getting people to kind of ask those questions, get a little bit more cheeky engagement. You never know.
Yeah, what's going on over there at Search Engine Round?
Yeah.
And I find Mark, and I think it's funny, the company he works for, I would love to have them on, by the way, because they seem to do an amazing job with some of their PR campaigns, and they're, I feel like, a relatively new on the scene sort of agency, and very much up and coming, and I'd be very interested to pick their pick their brain on what I feel like is, in our case, like we tend to lean towards technical and content, and they're more PR and offsite promotion, and that is a very, in my opinion, gray area of SEO, but can be incredibly, incredibly impactful. So they seem like some of the best in the business at doing it, and I would love to talk to them about more than just Mark's billboard, but
yeah.
discussion.
They're a great bunch of people, really lovely people, and very, very, very clever. And I think with them as well, it's they offer the creative side and the content and the link building, but they also have Steve Kenwright, and they also have Matt. The two of those two, as on the technical side, are really winning it as well.
Yeah, it's funny. They're so good at it that we've managed to turn a news item about the launch of Bing Webmaster Tools into them.
Yeah.
It's like what is it? 7 levels of Kevin Bacon, except with Rise at 7.
Yeah, the Rise at 7 factor.
Right. So Jeff, what else is in the news?
So there was actually a discussion on Twitter between Russ Jones and Danny Sullivan, and Russ asked, just in general, asking Google, so when you're looking at an EAT score, what are you actually looking for? Like, ultimately, if we're looking at a score in general, what kind of metrics or what kind of KPI should we be measuring to? And I like Danny's response, and I think it was one of those where he came out and said, our systems aren't looking for EAT. Like they don't have this. It's kind of like PageRank, I guess. I think PageRank used to exist at least, but they're not looking at it as much. But they want all their signals to. I think the way he put it is like there's so many different signals that we want to make sure they align with what a good human EAT assessment would be. So the idea is like even though there's not an EAT score, they're trying to have their algorithm kind of aligned to an EAT score without actually having the EAT score. So in a way, it's like confirming without confirming. But at the other end of that, it's like I tell all my clients this, and though EAT is like a terminology, and SEOs love to put in kind of 3-letter things because we are SEO. I always tell my clients like that we want to be like more of experts and and be more trustworthy, because that's great for customers. And I think that's where it comes down to is like, if a customer thinks that we're shady, then so is Google. And if the customer thinks we are kind of an authoritative source on what we are looking for, then it'll be good overall. But then Russ followed up. It's like, because he mentioned what a good human EAT assessment would be. So we know Google has people who look through search results and listings to see if they have, there is a human element to training their algorithm. So he was wondering if the people who are training the algorithms were thinking of EAT while they kind of train it. And Danny says, it's not like that. Rater data doesn't go directly into the algorithm system. So I think there's a lot, we don't know what's going on in Google. I think there's a lot going on that's like they're trying to become they'll give you the data that you want best. So I think this is just a lot of kind of the inside talkings and the way, Danny now talks like kind of around things and not directly at it. I think it is an interesting topic there, even though there isn't an EAT score. I think it's still something that we should kind of not strive to be, but for all our clients, we don't want to give them junk, and Google's trying not to show junk. And I think that's where EAT comes into place.
Yeah, Danny's he's the dark side is growing. He's joined the evil empire, and the dark side is growing darker day by day. Where I feel like at search engine land, like his goal was transparency and honesty and getting the information. And now that he's on the Google side, everything's got to come through some sort of a filter. But I think that the thing that sticks out to me about this discussion, and I don't know about you guys, but like anytime I see it, I just want to eat a sandwich. Like I don't know. And for me, that I joke, right? I joke. It makes me hungry, right? But at the same time, like when I hear stuff like this, like I file it under stuff that is long-term important, but that doesn't impact my day-to-day very, very much, because I feel like a lot of my clients have more basic problems than EAT. And not to say that that stuff is not important. And I actually, I mean, who am I to disagree with Google, right? But I'm going to. I'm going to like go on record and be skeptical that that they're not training. How could they not be training the algorithm? Why? I mean,
Right.
it's like structured data or meta descriptions, right? They say they don't impact your rankings, right? Okay, well, maybe they make people click on your result, which probably impacts your rankings over the course of time, because that's an indication of quality, right? So like, I guess why go through okay, and maybe there is no EAT score, right?
Mm-hmm.
I assume that that's correct, but your quality raters are doing something, right? They're looking for something. They're training the algorithm as they go through. They are training the algorithm. And one of the things that is clearly on their mind, according to Google's documentation, is EAT. Now, maybe it's not as simple as, hey, they push a button on this website and it automatically trains the algorithm to say that this website has more EAT, because there isn't more EAT. But like, when you think of the long-term ramifications of having human quality raters, of course that they're doing something like that. And of course, down the stream, it is integrating the comprehensive analysis that they're doing down the stream into the algorithm.
Right.
May not be a straight A to B, but it's certainly an A to B to C to D, right? Like that's what makes sense to me. And maybe I'm just a stupid human that doesn't understand, computers and
But you're training the algorithm too, right? When you go through and you click on what you know, and this is where people think Google, like, they favor big brands. And it's just because we all favor big brands to an extent. If I'm going to buy, I go to Amazon if I'm going to buy something, but that's the first place I usually start. And why do I go there? Because I know they have decent customer service. I know that if there's something that goes wrong with the product, they'll stand behind it, and things like that. So they have a lot of my trustworthiness in their site. Might not be the best price, and I think that's where people get confused, where they think Amazon's the cheapest, and they're usually not. But I mean, we just had a little snafu with them the other day where they charge both me and my wife for Prime, even though like I have Prime and she's under my Prime. So we called them up, surprisingly answered very quickly. I expected to be in like a wait for 30 minutes. Like, we were on the phone with them within a minute, and they had it all fixed within 5 minutes, and my credit card go back. So it's like things like that, like, make me keep going back to Amazon and build that trust with them. The one thing Danny did say, though, is the rater data is not going directly into the system.
Well, that's what
doesn't mean it's not getting there yet. So it's
it might be going through another means before it goes in.
Exactly.
Yeah. So Jeff, when you called Amazon, were you surprised when you found out that Jeff Bezos handles all of their customer interaction? He's just a robot.
Oh, it would have been amazing. But no, you know what? The funny thing is, I couldn't find the phone number to call Amazon on Amazon. Like, it is pretty well hidden. They try to make you go through a whole bunch of, QAs and stuff. But if I just typed Google customer service phone number or Amazon customer service in Google, the number came up as a big answer box. I was like, awesome. So like, that's all I wanted was the number, and you cannot find it on Amazon. So hint to anyone who's trying to call Amazon, Google it.
So Natalie, I don't know, like, what do you think about this whole EAT thing? I feel like we just spent the entire time talking and not letting our guests talk at all, because this is just what we do. We just yell about things during the news.
That's okay. So from my point of view, I guess it's pretty much an umbrella term, I find, like an umbrella term for what you should be doing. Because obviously, when you feed everything that we're doing on a day-to-day basis, if you put it into the whole expertise, authoritativeness, trustworthiness, it's like, well, yeah, that's exactly what we're meant to be doing, or at least on the white hat side, that's what you're meant to be doing. You're meant to be creating quality content that can be crawled and indexed by search engines and that users trust. So whether that's acquiring naturally acquiring backlinks, or whether that is someone just clicking through from the SERP, it just makes sense. Whether that, like the whole discussion around whether it's got its own score or how that's going to pan out in the future, who knows? But yeah, from my point of view, it's kind of one of those all-encompassing umbrella terms of what you're meant to be doing. And I discussed it with one of my execs a few weeks ago when we were thinking, he was like, well, what if someone brings that up when I'm training someone up or discussing that with an intern? And I'm like, well, just say these are the things that we're kind of aiming towards, because it kind of is that kind of umbrella term, or that's how I see it anyway, of what you should, in inverted commas, be doing. It's funny, with a lot of our clients looking to us for content strategy recommendations, I really try to explain that you want to be perceived as an authoritative and trusted expert in the space, right? So like I could have my site, and then there could be like WebMD, and I could be talking about medical advice on my site, and WebMD could be talking about the same thing, but because they are a trusted authority, nobody's going to listen to Jake's medical advice, right? And with the client and clients that we work on, there are times where they have it in their minds because they're trained by, in some cases, content agencies who produce X amount of pieces per month on a set schedule at 400 words per piece. And my first question is always like, why that many pieces? Why 400 words? What if the particular topic you're trying to rank for requires more depth and more expertise? And there's just never a lot of like rhyme or reason. And to share kind of an anecdotal story, this particular client once said to me in a meeting, like, I don't care what the piece of content is about as long as it brings us traffic and gooses the numbers. And I had to stop and say, like, I'm sorry, but I disagree with you respectfully, because like, what good is a particular piece of content if it has nothing to do with what you do? And in this case, it wasn't even in the funnel. It was like on Mars in terms of their conversion funnel. And the discussion that we really have tried to center in on is, when you're producing content, like, you want to figure out a way to produce content that is high quality enough and of an appropriate length, depending on what you're trying to rank for, to not just meet the minimum threshold of enough quality to rank, but figure out how you can make it better and how you can use your internal subject matter experts and your authority within the industry and put your unique spin on it that way, rather than just to use their term, kind of puking out content everywhere, no matter the quality or no matter your level of expertise on the particular subject, because you're chasing traffic. You're chasing traffic in vanity metrics. So like, that is definitely something for me where EAT becomes more of a real thing when the rubber sort of meets the road. And even to the extent of going back with some clients and pruning away content that really has no value to their business. And in those cases, they're always like, do we really want to get rid of content? Like, why would we do that? Why would we get rid of content? Why would we get rid of X amount of visits per month? Well, it's because, like, when you try to consider a search engine's perspective of your site as a whole and the expertise that you hold, well, I would have to imagine, if I'm trying to like break it down simply, that your expertise is distributed amongst all of the pages that you have on your site. Your authority, whatever magic authority score there is distributed, maybe not equally, but distributed through your site. And if you take away content that is doing nothing for you and doesn't matter, that expertise and authority hopefully gets kind of redistributed to amongst your more important pages that actually do matter. And I believe that used to be called page rank sculpting. And that is not necessarily what I'm trying to say. I'm not trying to say like
no follow certain links on your site or anything like that, but just the idea that there is some sort of overall measure of your site's level of expertise and authority that is distributed to all of your content, and the idea that pruning away or less valuable or not relevant content, even if it gets traffic that is nowhere near your customer funnel, can actually be a valuable tactic. And for me, it's worked. It's worked a couple of times. So definitely, a lot of people think content strategy is just adding more, and sometimes it's taking away so that you can improve your overall expertise and not have 2 great articles and 8 shit ones. You know what I mean? Yeah. So those are my thoughts. But mostly, I still just want to eat a sandwich. So let's move into kind of the third leg, and for me, this is the most important leg of the episode, and it is SEO and mental health. And I do kind of want to, I want to share my stories, but I want to kind of open up the floor to you guys. Natalie, I know that it is kind of near and dear to your heart, so I thought maybe I would let you kind of go first and talk about your experience in terms of not just how SEO has impacted your mental health, because it is broader than that, but in relation to SEO, I don't know, like, what are your thoughts on just kind of mental health as a subject and how it applies to your day-to-day life and work?
So I think with my health, it's kind of a multifaceted thing. So I'm not sure, like, listeners wise, who's aware, but on my Twitter account, I'm not 100%, always honest and open about my mental health. But, if I'm having a bad day, or if someone else is having a bad day, then I'm more than happy to talk about it, or just to say that I'm having a really rubbish day. I think a lot of the time it's making sure that people don't feel like they're alone. We've had over the last few years members of the community who have sadly passed away from suicide, and it's sometimes it can be due to there's loads of things going on in different people's lives, but we're quite an interesting group of people, and a lot of the time what we can do, whether it's in the workplace or whether you're a freelancer, whatever you're doing, sometimes a lot of SEOs might kind of isolate themselves or not feel like they're part of a community. I mean, we've got a really strong online community, whether it's the different Slack groups that are available or whether it is Twitter, but there are people who don't want to be part of that but still feel alone, and it's a really, really tricky one to kind of figure out, because obviously we don't want to take the place of someone that is a qualified mental health professional, but on the same kind of stage, it's you want to be there for your friends, for your colleagues. You want them to know that you're not alone, that we understand the pressures of the role. We previously spoke about the pressures of teaching. That's not to say that SEO doesn't have the pressures. But if you've got a specific deadline to keep to, or if you've got a pitch that you need to keep to, or there's something that you need to prepare for devs to push live within a certain time span, you could be working your socks off and just focusing on that and not giving yourself any time for you. And I found that previously that all I've wanted to do is when I finish my work is just to go home and do nothing. And it's kind of focusing on what else do we do? How do we deal with it? How do we look after each other and not just kind of deal with our own shit? pardon the language, but there are some really, really kind of horrible things that people go through in their day-to-day lives that we're not aware of, and it's just making sure that people, they don't have to say exactly what's going on, but that we get to talk about it. It's so important to me. Yeah,
I think talking about it is incredibly incredibly important. And as it relates to SEO, like, yeah, there is a ton of pressure. Is it as bad as teaching in terms of the level of pressure? Maybe not. But when you talk about the pressure to perform, the pressure to hit a specific deadline, or in SEO, like public speaking is a pressure, or getting up in front of a client when maybe the results aren't what you like, or having the client be very tough on you, or feeling like in the holidays you have to work weekends and sacrifice your work-life balance. It's not an uncommon expectation, and if you let it that bus kind of run you over, so to speak, the implications on the back end with your own balance and your own mental health can be pretty bad if you allow them to be. From my own perspective, I'll just kind of briefly, and if you want to hear like the very, very full version of this, I pretty much talked for almost 2 hours, and a lot of it was mental health related in my own introspective episode, which is all the way back at episode 10. Hard to believe that is now 32 episodes ago, which is
wow.
insane. We've managed to churn out a lot of episodes. But man, so I came up from an abusive household, both physically and mentally, and I carried a lot of that baggage with me. I even still, I would say, carry that baggage with me in terms of how it has shaped who I am kind of as a person. But there were many years where I quite simply did not feel good enough, or did not, had a chip on my shoulder all the time, where I took things that weren't personal to me and made them personal to me in terms of maybe taking offense to things that I shouldn't have taken offense to, or feeling like somebody said something and that was a slight on me. And I know now that is directly in response to kind of the way that I was conditioned growing up. And then I would say that there have been a couple of times in jobs where I've been to the point of being so unhappy that I also came up as an athlete, and in part of being a man, especially in the United States culture where sports is like a huge thing, there is some level of pressure to be tough, right? And to not admit weakness, and to never show anybody that you're hurting. And I think that, as we kind of move on in time, that stigma with, the new generations getting older is becoming less and less predominant and important. But in my time, that was still something that was important. So like those feelings of negativity, like sometimes got pushed down, or I would never go to the doctor, for example, to admit that I had some sort of weakness and that I was struggling with my mental health. But probably the most recent example was right before I came to search discovery. So I was at a company at that time. It was called startups.co, now startups.com. They've transitioned. Before that, I was at Rosetta, which then was merged with Razorfish. So by the end of my time there, it was Razorfish. And I had decided to take a job closer to home. Startups had recruited me, and it was right down the street, and it was going from agency to in-house. And I went in-house with them, and I didn't stay there for very long. But I knew on the first day somehow that like it wasn't going to be a fit. Like I just knew almost as soon as I walked in somehow that I was like, something's off here. And I couldn't put my finger on it right away. And not only that, but coming from the previous job, we had talked a little bit about how agencies can become almost like a family. And we had a very tight-knit team at that time that for me, when I made the transition to benefit my family by being closer to home and making more money, right? Things that are that should have been really, really meaningful and important. But then when I got there, it almost felt like, because I went from seeing certain team members and who had become my friends to not seeing them every day, to not seeing them or talking to them really at all. It felt like for lack of a better term, like somebody had died. So I went through, and I don't know if I self-sabotaged the new job or not, but for me, it was almost like a period of mourning the loss of being able to work with the great people that I had worked with before. And that became really, really difficult, especially as I was ramping up in this new job and a new, totally different culture than what I was used to. And I found that for whatever reason, the people at startups they were plenty nice. There was nothing wrong with them, but I just did not feel like I fit within that culture. And pretty quickly, like I fell into a depression, and I didn't know what to do. And I didn't have an answer. And I remember like really clearly one day, and this was right before I eventually left, and thank God startups came along, or not startups, search discovery came along. But I was standing in the bathroom getting ready in the morning, and I was like, I told my wife, and my wife knows that like if I'm not talking about my job, like things are good. But when I start talking about my job more at home, like things are not as good. And I just had to say, Gina, I think I'm depressed. I think something's wrong. I don't think I can work at my job anymore. And for me, like coming from the culture that I had come from, and the idea that you don't admit weakness and so on and so forth, and all of that, past abuse, it wasn't easy for me to admit that to myself. And then not only that, say it out loud. And luckily I was able to have a place where I could go to in search discovery that luckily it's all, and I've always said like there are a lot of things that line up with fate in my life. And I apologize. I feel like I'm going on and on and on. But that was one thing where they just happened to have a job opening, and I just happened to know that a lot of people that I had previously worked with at Razorfish were there here at Search Discovery now. And I reached out, and I was pretty honest. And I said, guys, I'm kind of desperate. I'm really, really, really unhappy to the point of being depressed where I'm at. And I know that I shouldn't by rights feel this way, because this job was almost like the perfect job. And Tim Truss, my boss, literally within 2 hours of sending him a message on LinkedIn, called me and set up an interview that same day. And I was on the phone with a couple of my now current colleagues here in interviewing, and it was like a whirlwind. And I was so grateful that Search Discovery was able to come along and kind of scoop me up, and I feel so much more at home. And I can say I was able to kind of get through it and battle through the depression, and it was a battle. But man, it just felt like a giant weight lifted off my shoulders. And I don't know like how you guys feel, or if you guys allow what happens professionally to affect you to that degree. But I know for me, my professional life, I almost feel like is so important to me as it relates to who I am, that I almost exclusively, that's where my depression comes from nowadays. Now, when I was younger, it came more from personal life. But now, like if I fall into that, and who knows, I might fall into it again at some point in the future. It's very unpredictable, but I don't know how you guys feel, or if you've battled through anything similar.
Yeah. So from my point of view, it seems like we had quite a similar background growing up. So I come from a family where there was physical and mental abuse. So I've always got that feeling that I'm not good enough, that I'll never be good enough, that nothing that I do is good enough. And I love my job, I love the things that I do, but when you've got that constantly nagging away in your head, like many of us sadly do, combined with an industry that's almost kind of, that some people have celebrity status that's pretty unattainable for many. And you've got the imposter syndrome that, some people argue, imposter syndrome doesn't exist. It's a middle class or an upper middle class luxury.
It's so hard in the industry. It's so hard.
Yeah. And when you've got that, and you pair those two things together with the pressure to perform, being a woman, being someone that's, you know, having to deal with toxic masculinity, being someone who's from a different even, you know, a race or cultural background, having those different things paired together with all of the different elements and the facets and the intersections of our role, it can be so hard, and you feel like you're constantly at some point you're, you know, treading water, and it just takes one thing to make you think, right, I need to sort things out. I need to take a breath. I need to figure out what I need to change, whether it's something in your home life, whether it's your job, whether you need to go and speak to human resources, or just, you know, go and take a little bit more time for yourself, book a holiday, or go and see the doctor. There's lots of things that you can do, but it's up to you to try and figure out what is the issue and how are you going to deal with it.
Yeah, I think, and Jeff, I don't know if you have any, Jeff, do you have any thoughts on this before I jump back in?
No, I mean, it's tough, right?
Thoughts? Yeah.
No, it's tough because I think we all battle, you know, whether it's stress related or I think any of my mental health comes from stress, which is probably caused by mental health. You know, going through it that way, where I definitely internalize a lot of things until I explode. And at that time, because sometimes I feel it doesn't matter, you know, in the long grand scheme of things, right? And that's where it builds up, and then I explode. But a lot of it's just stress building on me until I act out, and then once I act out, then it's like, then after that it's damage done, and things that might happen after that. But I think we all kind of battle it in a way. But I mean, and maybe I, you know, when it comes down to that, it's like, I don't think I've ever done anything to be super damaging that I like, where I felt like I needed help. But at the same time, I think, you know, just talking, and I know at work here at Search Discovery, we have these monthly meetings about how to thrive at our company. And the last 2 months have been more about mental health, where we talked about doing things with mindfulness. And then we had someone kind of talk about their mental health issues and what they did to go through it. And it is good. It's the one thing is it's good to know is that, like, a lot of people go through this, and it's not just you. So being able to just talk, whether it's professional or just talking to somebody that will listen, can really help get some of that out and really help clean it up. And that's more of just, to me, anxiety and stress, not necessarily a true mental health issue, where that's at. And that's where I mean, you definitely need professional help then. But if it's, you know, it's just even things just like stress building up can definitely cause some, you know, unstable mental conditions.
Yeah. And so the one part of this that I don't want to pretend to like have answers. And if you're somebody that is going through this, it's very easy for other people on the outside that are not going through it to tell you how you should feel or how you should fix it. Some of those answers might help, and some of them might not. I'm sure that there have been plenty of people that have made the decision to take their own life that did so, and I don't personally confess to understand that, but that did so knowing that they had people probably telling them how they should handle their own lives, and what changes they need to make, and maybe even knowing that people love them. And I think that that's an important component of it too. Like, sometimes I have thought about, like, things as dark as, like, would I be missed? Stuff like that. And of course, you know the answer to that, but when you're going through it, sometimes it's hard to kind of sort it all out. And I think the interesting thing is, from the outsider's perspective, looking in terms of what you can do, I think as an outsider, and again, I don't profess to have the answers, I think a really, really important skill, just as a human, important very much in SEO, because you're constantly dealing with people and you're constantly building relationships, is empathy. I've actually said, like, working with developers, one of the best skills you can have to work with developers is not like technical expertise, it's empathy, to knowing what people are going through. And not only that, knowing that every single person that you pass every single day everybody is going through something. And just having an emotional intelligence and an awareness and an empathy and being willing to be there for that person if they'll have you. Now, some people won't. Some people kind of choose to approach their problems on their own. And if sometimes I'm like that. And for me, what has helped me really is just being honest with myself and recognizing when I'm in kind of a darker place and figuring out, okay, what steps do I need to take to dig myself out of this? But there might be people that don't know what steps they have to take. And as somebody on the outside, having empathy, I would say is a really important skill. I know, so my brother, to share another quick anecdote. So my brother is gay, and being gay in the Midwest is not it's not a cool thing. Not because I don't think it's cool. I think it's great. But with kind of the cultural values in the Midwest, the reaction that he got from my family was about what you would expect, which is to say that it was awful. And he went through, and now he's very proud of who he is, but he went through for a long time some pretty severe mental health issues. And it felt very much like there was not a thing I could do other than to empathize and let him talk. It wasn't like I was going to change my family's mind about the way that they thought, as backwards as I thought they were. There was no changing their mind. So it's not like I can do an end around and go fix the situation for him, right? And I think that for him, it was a combination of feeling comfortable in his skin, no matter what other people said. And on my side, it was being there for him, just if for nothing else, just to listen. And let him vent and let him kind of share his frustrations. And I don't know, doing my best to just be kind of a good, at that point in time, just a good brother. But yeah, so I don't know what you guys feel in terms of like recommendations for how to approach people that might be struggling with this, or how to approach yourself if you're struggling with this. But kind of that would be my thing, is just the empathy.
Yeah, I think being there, being open, and being able to provide, whether it's getting someone to send you a direct message or just being there to listen, or just having them know that you're there to listen. Obviously, everyone has their own experiences, and there will be people that have had bad experiences where someone said, "Oh, I'm here to listen," and they haven't had people listen to them. That has happened in the past. But I think building where you've been building your own community, or whether it's your family, friends, I think, yeah, just being there for each other really, really matters. Like, a lot of people are like, well, talk about it. You can talk about it, but if you're going through something and you don't feel like you want to talk about something, it's a really, really, really difficult one. Being there for someone, you can't always ask for help. You don't always want to ask for help. Sadly, one of a very popular celebrity in the UK took her own life last week. And one of the Instagram posts that she posted back in September, and she mentioned it, and it it really resonated with me, because I felt that way a lot. Is I don't want to be a burden. And I think it's being there for people and at least trying to help out and say, well, you're not a burden to me. I'm here for you. I listen. You might not be there at that exact time, but there are people, and yeah, it's just supporting each other.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, again, I always feel on my side, I don't ever want to make things worse either, right? And it's giving bad advice, I think, could be, I think I might have grew up in the area where it's like, pull yourself together, pull yourself up, dust it off, and that's not a lot of the best recommendations there. So, I think just being there and being open and, making the person feel like you're not burdening them is a big thing. Awesome. Well, this is a great discussion. And it's one I think that we need to have more and more of, and not necessarily just SEO industry, just with your friends. If you see anyone who's out there struggling, try to reach out and help, or at least find the information that might be able to help them. So cool. Oh, go ahead.
So Jeff, do you want to close out with our question? I feel like it's always me with the
yeah, no worries. Awesome. So Natalie, we like to finish the show by asking a question, and basically it comes down to, if you were starting off in SEO today, what advice would you give yourself or give someone else who would be, starting off in SEO today?
Oh, wow. So I would say try to stay eager, keep your interest up, find out what you enjoy and try and figure out exactly what you enjoy and what makes you tick, and run with that. It might not always work for your client or your company, but I'm sure you'll be able to find somewhere that does, and it does work. But it's I think definitely find something that you enjoy and that you want to do, because in this industry there's so many aspects of where you can do exactly what you want to do and exactly what you enjoy. And that's one of the great things about working in SEO.
That is so true. There are so many different ways you can go nowadays and still be an SEO. So Natalie, where can people find you?
So people can find me on Twitter. So my Twitter handle is @__NCA. I'm on LinkedIn, and just find me, Natalie Arney. And I will have my own website up and running soon. But they're where I'm usually found, mainly on Twitter, talking about Animal Crossing and Bon Appetit and all kinds of other things alongside SEO. And
in April, on a conference stage at Brighton SEO. So
exactly,
congratulations for that.
Yeah.
So go find her there. If you're going to Brighton SEO, find her session and learn how to punch above your weight. All right, Natalie, it was a great discussion. Thank you so much for coming on. And like I said before, I think that this has the potential to be one of our more important episodes, just because it talks about, I think, not just the SEO life, but something that I feel like is an underlying and an undercurrent of everything that we do as humans, not just SEO, but it's definitely something that is important in the SEO industry. So I'm glad that we were able to talk about it.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for listening to the Page 2 podcast. If you'd like to find out more about the show or listen to more episodes, visit us at page2podcast.fm. That's page, 2, podcast.fm. Our episodes are also available on a number of other platforms, including Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Breaker, Deezer, Overcast, Pocket Cast, Stitcher, TuneIn, and more. Additionally, you can also listen to our show on our new YouTube channel. If you'd like to become a sponsor or would like to be interviewed, get in touch with us at thepage2podcast@gmail.com. Until next time, happy optimizing.